All right, let's dive right into this explainer, because right now, guys, we are watching a massive, high-stakes standoff unfold on the global stage. We're going to look at the strategic chessboard currently set up between the US and Iran. We'll be analyzing the options on the table straight from recent intelligence and on-the-ground analysis. We're talking military maneuvers, political rhetoric, and the very harsh reality of what a conflict or even a diplomatic deal would actually mean.
So here's how we're breaking this down today. First, setting the board. Then, option A, military strike. Next, we'll look at the potential blowback. Option B, grand bargain. And finally, the political endgame. Let's get right into it.
Part 1. Setting the board. Specifically, the Armada in the Gulf and the recent domestic crackdowns. To really understand the options here, we've got to establish the intense reality on the ground right now. The pieces are actively moving.
Okay, so the US is systematically moving a massive armada into striking range. It's a huge tactical power play. Step 1. The USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier literally goes dark. They turned off the transponders so it couldn't be tracked, moving silently right into the Persian Gulf. Step 2, it's escorted by 3 guided missile destroyers. Step 3, we've got warplanes deploying to bases all over the place. Qatar, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and Step 4, even more F-15 fighter jets and C-17 transport planes are being sent to the region. It's basically a formidable ring of steel.
But at the exact same time, there is a horrific reality playing out inside Iran. The government there just carried out one of the most brutal crackdowns we've seen on its own citizens. Protests were violently crushed across at least 19 cities. We're talking thousands killed. Mothers, students, shopkeepers, people simply demanding change. So the unrest is suppressed for now, but it leaves this incredibly volatile domestic situation right as this massive U.S. armada pulls up.
Which brings us to Part 2. Option A. Military strike. If the U.S. decides to go kinetic, what are the actual targets on the table?
Well, the biggest one is the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. This is Iran's most powerful military group, boasting over 125,000 members with bases spread nationwide. Now, targeting them is crucial because analysts note the IRGC was the primary force behind that recent brutal repression of civilians we just talked about. A strike here directly punishes the architects of that crackdown.
And if we look at the broader strike matrix, military planners have a few other options. Beyond the IRGC, there's the nuclear and missile programs, which echoes last June's Operation Midnight Hammer. Then you have economic targets, like oil and gas facilities, which would just totally devastate an already collapsing economy. Finally, there's the leadership option, targeting Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei directly. Though let's be real, most analysts consider that one highly unlikely.
Now on to Part 3, the potential blowback. Because, every aggressive move on this chessboard invites a countermove, and Iran's military is sounding incredibly defiant right now. A U.S. strike absolutely would not go unanswered. Just look at this warning from an Iranian commander. Quote, "The finger is on the trigger. If you sow the wind, you will reap the whirlwind." They even painted that exact phrase on a massive new mural in Tehran. The message is pretty unambiguous, right? They are fully prepared to retaliate. And that blowback would be immediate, and it would be global. We're looking at proxy attacks, like the Houthis in Yemen targeting Red Sea ships, which we're already seeing. There could be strikes on U.S. allies in the Gulf. That alone would send global oil prices absolutely soaring, hitting all of us right at the pump. There's also the potential for an offensive aimed at Israel. Plus, commercial airlines are already scrambling, canceling Middle East airspace routes. It would be a massive disruption.
But here's the real kicker. What analysts call the military paradox. The biggest blowback might actually be psychological. See, initiating military action could end up uniting the Iranian people behind the very same hated government that just massacred them. Because human nature, right? People rally around the flag when attacked by an outside force. It's a deep contradiction, and it brings us to the alternate strategy.
That brings us to Part 4. Option B, grand bargain. A deal at the end of a gun. Instead of firing missiles, this whole armada could just be the ultimate diplomatic leverage. The U.S. could force a deal that demands the total removal of enriched uranium, a massive reduction of long-range missiles, and a complete ban on all nuclear enrichment. It solves the nuclear threat, which is great, but there's a devastating catch. This grand bargain offers zero help to the Iranian people who just rose up. Actually, making a deal leaves that oppressive regime in power. It essentially strengthens the very people who just crushed the protesters' hopes.
So, let's look at Part 5, the political endgame. To really understand the shifting rationales here, we need to zoom out from the Middle East and look at Washington, D.C.
Analysts have spotted a really fascinating shift in the rationale for all this buildup. Just a couple weeks ago, the president's messaging was all about the Iranian protesters, promising help is on the way. But his most recent social post? A complete pivot. It focused entirely on no nuclear weapons and completely dropped any mention of the protesters. And look, targeting nuclear ambitions is a totally different, vastly more complex operation than supporting civilian regime change. It's a massive shift in the strategic endgame.
Then there's this glaring disconnect between the political rhetoric and the intelligence reality. You've got officials like Secretary of State Marco Rubio urging preemptive strikes to protect U.S. personnel from a weakened Iran. But if you look at the actual intelligence, analysts point out there's literally zero indication that Iran is planning any kind of first strike. So this fierce escalatory language seems totally disconnected from the actual threat level on the ground.
So why the sudden escalation? Well, political analysts suggest this international posturing is a perfect way to shift media attention. The administration just had a really rough month of domestic climb-downs, controversy over NATO troops, backtracking on Minneapolis, and that totally bizarre news cycle about buying Greenland. Rattling sabers in the Gulf totally changes the conversation. It stops the domestic drift and projects the image of a president in control.
Which brings us to the ultimate question we have to ask as we watch this incredibly dangerous board evolve. Is this massive armada truly about Iranian containment? Or is it a high-stakes geopolitical distraction to project control at home? It's a pretty heavy thought, and it's absolutely going to define the coming weeks. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, guys. I hope this helped clear up some of the chaos. Keep asking questions.